Welcome. I'm Osagi Okumba, Country Chairman for Shell Companies in Nigeria. At Shell, we deliver sustainable energy solutions that power the economies of countries and the world. The Nigerian Economic Summit has been a platform for the articulation of policy frameworks for addressing our nation's economic challenges and for fostering meaningful partnerships. The 30th edition of the summit, which is themed Collaborative Action for Growth, Competitiveness, and Stability, would not have come at a better time. Now more than ever, we need to come together to co-create solutions to unlock Nigeria's vast potentials. Shell is a proud sponsor of the 30th Nigeria Economic Summit, and I invite you to join us, both in person and virtually, for the summit that holds between the 14th and the 16th of October 2024. Together, empowering progress and articulating a clear pathway for building a brighter future for all Nigerians. See you there, and thank you.
Trust does not come cheap. It's a word you can bank on. The efficiency you can trade with. Trust is the insight you base your business decision on. Trust should give your dreams wings, taking you above and beyond your borders. You have to trust your gut and trust that your dreams are valid. Trust should be what you demand and what every partner should give. In our world of corporate and investment banking, trust is a big word. A word that guides and leads our commitment to your growth and that of your business. Go for growth with your trusted partner.
Ever feel like your bills are playing hide and seek? Like you can't keep up with where your money goes? See your money speak plain English with the budgeting feature on One Bank. One Bank budgeting extends beyond the basics. It is the one key to making your dreams a reality. Here is how it works. Select budgeting from the Pay and Transfer menu. Click on create a new monthly budget. Now, set your budget limit and give your budget a name. Choose the category that fits your budget from the list provided, and with a simple click on Create a Budget, you are on your way to take control over your finances. Whether it's a luxurious vacation, a new car, a new house, or establishing an emergency fund, One Bank Budgeting transforms these dreams into practical, doable plans. Life's chaotic, but your finances don't have to be. Download One Bank today.
The 1990s in Nigeria were a time of economic uncertainty. The oil boom had faded, and the country faced a future clouded by debt and inflation. It was against this backdrop that a group of visionary Nigerians came together, determined to chart a new course. In 1993, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the NESG, was born. Led by the indomitable chief Ernest Shonekan, the NESG brought together business leaders, academics, and policymakers. Their mission: to foster open dialogue and propose innovative solutions to the nation's economic challenges. The annual NESG Summit became a landmark event, a platform where critical issues were debated, ideas exchanged, and a roadmap for a more prosperous Nigeria was laid out. The NESG tackled tough topics, diversifying the economy beyond oil, reforming the public sector, and promoting private sector investment. The impact was undeniable. Many of the NESG's recommendations found their way into government policies. From privatization initiatives to agricultural reforms, the NESG's influence helped steer Nigeria towards a path of economic recovery. Today, the NESG's legacy lives on. The spirit of open dialogue and collaborative problem solving continues to inspire a new generation of Nigerians. Looking back at the past 3 decades, we see the NESG not just but as a catalyst for change. A space where a nation dared to dream of a brighter future. The 30th Nigerian Economic Summit NES 30 marks a pivotal moment, underscoring the summit's critical role in facilitating meaningful discussions that shape the trajectory of Nigeria's economic development. This milestone event reaffirms Nigeria's strategic importance in both regional and global economic arenas, highlighting its potential and global competitiveness. Be a part of NES 30 with the theme Collaborative Action for Growth, Competitiveness, and Stability. Date: October 14th to 16th, 2024. Venue: Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. This is just the beginning of the NESG story. Join us as we explore the next chapters, where the journey for a thriving Nigerian economy continues.
Welcome to APM Terminals Nigeria, where modern logistics meets a legacy of lifting global trade in the heart of Nigeria's maritime industry. With world-class facilities in Apapa, Kano, and Onne, we lift about half of Nigeria's containerized trade and provide direct and indirect employment to more than 10,000 Nigerian families. But we are willing to do more and further develop infrastructure, people, and technology, truly lifting standards in the port industry.
At the Bank of Industry, we provide long-term financial support at very low interest rates to small, medium, and large enterprises in Nigeria's real sectors. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.
What will banking look like in the future? For over a century, we've been growing to meet the needs of an ever-changing world, delivering unique solutions to help our customers reach increasingly bigger dreams. Innovating to create an exciting new world of convenience and freedom, where what you can achieve is only limited by your imagination. Opening up new, more inclusive channels for commerce. Empowering a new generation to reach beyond their dreams and grow into the giants they were always meant to be. We're helping to create a future where there are possibilities and where the world looks up to Africa. Let's awaken the giant in you. You first. First Bank.
Welcome to Cafe Nutade. What would you like to order, please?
I would like some pancakes with some spread.
And you?
I'd like a slice of toast and spread.
Golden penny spread, oh. Easy to spread, oh. Good for the kids, oh. The man no go worry.
Well done, kiddos.
Thanks to Golden Penny Spread, easy to spread and good for the family.
Mama like
Golden Penny Spread, easy to spread and good for the family.
We are IHS Towers, one of the world's largest operators and developers of shared telecommunications infrastructure.
That looks good, darling.
I learned from the best.
Glad you will get your bar, husband.
But it got you to marry me, didn't it? Close your eyes. I have a gift for you.
Wait, down.
Maybe close your eyes.
Okay.
This is a thank you for all the sunrises that you've given me all these years.
Hey, now you're going to make me cry.
Don't worry, baby. I'll be home soon.
Every moment, every smile, every emotion is richer with the right connection.
Thank you for lighting up my life. You're a real gift.
Are you passionate about lending your voice to public policy issues in your sector? Would you like to see the Nigerian economy transformed? Would you like to be part of Nigeria's journey to sustainable economic transformation and inclusion? Join the team of experts at the NESG Policy Commissions. As the foremost private sector think tank in Nigeria, the NESG has been at the vanguard of driving key reforms in the Nigerian economy. Experts and stakeholders across our 12 policy commissions lend their voices on key issues of national interest, with over 40 thematic working groups committed to driving policy change across sectors and thematic areas. Join us today at nesgroup.volunteersmatters.org to continue the conversations at this summit. For more information, kindly visit our webpage at nesgroup.org/policy commissions. You can also visit the registration desk. Thank you.
trust does not come cheap. It's a word you can bank on. The efficiency you can trade with. Trust is the insight you base your business decision on. Trust should give your dreams wings, taking you above and beyond your borders. You have to trust your gut and trust that your dreams are valid. Trust should be what you demand and what every partner should give. In our world of corporate and investment banking, trust is a big word. A word that guides and leads our commitment to your growth and that of your business. Go for growth with your trusted partner.
Ever feel like your bills are playing hide and seek? Like you can't keep up with where your money goes? See your money speak plain English with the budgeting feature on One Bank. One Bank budgeting extends beyond the basics. It is the one key to making your dreams a reality. Here is how it works. Select budgeting from the Pay and Transfer menu. Click on Create a new monthly budget. Now, set your budget limit and give your budget a name. Choose the category that fits your budget from the list provided, and with a simple click on Create a Budget, you are on your way to take control over your finances. Whether it's a luxurious vacation, a new car, a new house, or establishing an emergency fund, One Bank budgeting transforms these dreams into practical, doable plans. Life's chaotic, but your finances don't have to be. Download One Bank today.
The 1990s in Nigeria were a time of economic uncertainty. The oil boom had faded, and the country faced a future clouded by debt and inflation. It was against this backdrop that a group of visionary Nigerians came together, determined to chart a new course. In 1993, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the NESG, was born. Led by the indomitable chief Ernest Shonekan, the NESG brought together business leaders, academics, and policymakers. Their mission: to foster open dialogue and propose innovative solutions to the nation's economic challenges. The annual NESG Summit became a landmark event, a platform where critical issues were debated, ideas exchanged, and a roadmap for a more prosperous Nigeria was laid out. The NESG tackled tough topics, diversifying the economy beyond oil, reforming the public sector, and promoting private sector investment. The impact was undeniable. Many of the NESG's recommendations found their way into government policies. From privatization initiatives to agricultural reforms, the NESG's influence helped steer Nigeria towards a path of economic recovery. Today, the NESG's legacy lives on. The spirit of open dialogue and collaborative problem-solving continues to inspire a new generation of Nigerians. Looking back at the past 3 decades, we see the NESG not just as an economic think tank, but as a catalyst for change. A space where a nation dared to dream of a brighter future. The 30th Nigerian Economic Summit NES30 marks a pivotal moment, underscoring the summit's critical role in facilitating meaningful discussions that shape the trajectory of Nigeria's economic development. This milestone event reaffirms Nigeria's strategic importance in both regional and global economic arenas, highlighting its potential and global competitiveness. Be a part of NES30 with the theme Collaborative Action for Growth, competitiveness, and stability.
Date October 14th to 16th, 2024.
Venue Transcorp Hilton Abuja. This is just the beginning of the NESG story. Join us as we explore the next chapters where the journey for a thriving Nigerian economy continues.
Welcome to APM Terminals Nigeria, where modern logistics meet a legacy of lifting global trade in the heart of Nigeria's maritime industry. With world-class facilities in Apapa, Kano, and Onne, we lift about half of Nigeria's containerized trade and provide direct and indirect employment to more than 10,000 Nigerian families. But we are willing to do more and further develop infrastructure, people, and technology, truly lifting standards in the port industry.
At the Bank of Industry, we provide long-term financial support at very low interest rates to small, medium, and large enterprises in Nigeria's real sectors. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.
What will banking look like in the future? For over a century, we've been growing to meet the needs of an ever-changing world, delivering unique solutions to help our customers reach increasingly bigger dreams. Innovating to create an exciting new world of convenience and freedom, where what you can achieve is only limited by your imagination. Opening up new, more inclusive channels for commerce. New generation to reach beyond their dreams and grow into the giants they were always meant to be. We're helping to create a future where there are possibilities and where the world looks up to Africa. Let's awaken the giant in you. You first. First Bank.
Good morning, everyone. Can we please start settling down a bit? Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very high-level panel discussion on fueling growth, the future of oil and gas. I'm quite excited because when I look at my panelists, I know that we're going to have a very engaging, interesting, thought-provoking, and hopefully future-shaping conversation. The aim of this is for us to talk about things that matter within this space, but more importantly, to leave this room with, I would say, action items and points that hopefully when we implement will make the future much brighter within the energy space. So without further ado, I'm going to first of all introduce my panelists. Like I said, I'm very excited with the people that are going to come before you to have these discussions. Before I do that, let me just highlight that it's going to be a very interactive session. We will talk, but the audience will also have the opportunity to talk as well, ask questions, and ask the questions. I mean, this is an opportunity. Once I introduce the panelists, you'll understand why I say ask questions, because this is a golden opportunity you have to direct questions to people that matter and people that can make a difference in the conversations we're having. So without further ado, I will start the introduction. I'm not being biased, but I'm going to start from the right-hand side. That's my excuse. Please join me in welcoming Miss Aisha Maina. She is Amina, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Miss Amina Maina. She is a group CEO of MRS Holdings. Next to her, I would like to introduce someone that, I mean, obviously all of us are very much aware of because he represents a company that we're all deeply vested in. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Philip Shilbila, who is the MD CEO of the Nigerian LNG company. Again, I put that Nigeria LNG company, so that's why we're all vested in that. And finally, last but definitely not the least, who I have to say a very big thank you to for jumping in as well, last minute, but like he's wont to do anyway. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Mr. Osagi Okumo, who is the MD of SPDC and the chairman of the Shell companies in Nigeria. Now, so like I said, this is one of those panels that you don't really get to see often. Trust me when I say that the lineup you have here is really high level, and there are people that probably shape the industry in the country in their own respective areas of operation. Now, we're talking today about fueling growth, the future of oil and gas. And I'd like to put some context around the discussions we're going to have so that you would understand the questions, their perspectives, and what they're speaking to. So permit me just to give you a bit of an overview in terms of the background and the context to which we'll be speaking to. So over the past decades, the natural gas and crude oil revenues have been pivotal in driving economic growth and development across several African economies. These resources have underpinned significant infrastructure investments, social programs, and industrial development. However, challenges plaguing the oil and gas industry threaten its strategic role as a driver of economic growth that it is. Some of these challenges include the dynamics of future demand, global shift towards cleaner energy, declining investments for project development, complex regulatory, fiscal, and governance regimes, worsening security and community relations, and trust and transparency issues, amongst others. It has therefore become imperative for us to rethink the future of oil and gas in a rapidly changing economic landscape to continue fueling growth and development. To put it in context, the oil and gas industry is estimated to contribute over 20% of Africa's GDP, and believe me, some actually think it contributes much more than that. However, the industry is facing unprecedented challenges and transformations due to several key factors. First of all, global oil demand is expected to decline significantly. The IEA, which is the International Energy Agency, in its 2023 World Energy Outlook, predicts a drop from about 100 million barrels per day to 77 million barrels per day by 2030, with a further decline to 24 million barrels per day by 2050. And I hope hearing these numbers, you begin to think of how significant that might be for us, especially if we're currently averaging about 1.1, 1.2 million barrels a day as a country. This decrease in demand is driven by the global energy transition, as renewable energy sources are rapidly gaining market share. However, fossil fuels will continue to play a pivotal role, particularly in sectors like petrochemicals, aviation, and shipping, albeit with reduced significance. Environmental concerns, particularly climate change, are also exerting pressure on the industry to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of companies are adopting strategies to electrify operations, deploy carbon capture systems, and invest in renewable energy. The need to lower the carbon footprint is now a strategic priority, which many companies setting ambitious targets to reach net zero by 2050. This presents a dual challenge for Africa. Its oil and gas resources are more carbon intensive and costly to produce. I'm sure Mr. Osage will tell us more about that, compared to other regions. Now, consequently, what this means for Africa oil and gas projects is that they're at a higher risk of becoming uncompetitive as the global capital pool for hydrocarbon projects diminishes. Moreover, you have geopolitical tensions, such as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, which have led to volatility in global energy markets. European efforts to reduce reliance on Russia's natural gas have also created opportunities for African producers. But however, this comes with the caveat that Africa's oil and gas infrastructure must be resilient, built up, and competitive to meet the new demands. So in the context of all of this, in response to all these dynamics, the Africa oil and gas producing countries are exploring strategies to strengthen their resilience, and this includes optimizing fiscal terms, improving operational efficiencies, and investing in low carbon technologies and infrastructure. Some countries also want to diversify their energy mix by investing in renewable energy projects, which could help reduce their dependence on oil and gas revenues and secure new revenue streams. In addition, we have local issues in the petroleum producing economies, such as complex regulatory frameworks and disproportionate fiscal regimes, which are disrupting the optimization of the industry's exploration and production operations, while deteriorating security and community relations hurt investors' confidence. At this time, it is important to discuss and address these challenges and their implications towards seeking solutions that can ensure that the industry continues to thrive in an environmentally sustainable manner and for the country's and the continent's economic growth. So it is in light of that we're going to look and focus our discussions around a few sort of market trends and dimensions today, namely the dynamics of demand, regulatory and fiscal environment, and then more importantly, investment and project development costs. So to kick it off, I'm going to have each of our panelists give us a 2-minute overview from their perspective of how this is shaping up. And I'll start with Philip. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Laide. Thanks for that context that you've set. I think to start with, we're here for the NESG, and when you look at Nigeria's economy, there are a couple of things that come to mind, and these things keep coming back again in various panels and discussions. One is that the economy has to grow. The second is that the economy has to diversify. And the third is that we, as Nigerians, actually have to drive this. We can't wait, hoping that some investor somewhere is going to come and save the economy and transform it. But if I go back to the need for the economy to grow, it is key that the oil and gas industry participates in that growth as well. If you look at the huge potential that we have, and you've described it at an Africa level, but we all know it's even bigger at a Nigeria level, what the potential is. So the potential is there. the requirement for us to actually push this industry to its potential, quite frankly, is within the powers of the government and the private sector. And this is where the platform like NESG becomes extremely useful, because it pulls these parties together to try and address some of the challenges that Nigeria faces. It is critical that our economy diversifies, but the way that I see the diversification in Nigeria is that it needs to be additive rather than a replacement. So if you go back to the 50s and 60s, what happened was that we had an agriculture-based economy that then got replaced with oil and gas, essentially, as the primary driver of the economy. What we're asking for is not a reversal of that. It is that both must grow. In fact, what we expect is that non-oil and gas should grow at a much faster pace than even the oil and gas. But all must grow. For that to happen, I believe that there are a number of critical things that need to be addressed, and you listed some of them, right? The regulatory environment has to be addressed, and we're seeing signals of some of that being done. I think it needs to happen a lot faster. I think that investment has to come into the industry at a much higher level. The biggest issue that I see with investment is around some of the risks to investment within the sector. And I'm sure we'll have time to talk about how we de-risk the environment as well. But at the end of the day, we also have to take cognizance of the energy transition. And while the rest of the world is hyping it up, we've seen moves forward, we've seen moves backwards, and so on. But the reality is that in general, the whole industry will move in the direction of energy transition. And that's something that we have to embark upon ourselves. The pace and all of that may be different from other places, and what we actually do may be different. How we continue to promote natural gas, as an example, is one that may be different from other places in the world. But I think that we have all it takes within Nigeria to do what we need to do in order to perform and to maximize the potential that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will come back to you in terms of the transition and energy transition fuel. Amina, your thoughts and perspectives, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think that Nigeria and Africa as a whole is at a sort of deciding moment in terms of energy transition, in terms of consumption. There's so much talk about cleaner fuels, about emissions, but I think the first thing we need to worry about is how we harness the resources that we have, because we cannot talk about global emissions and say, oh, but Africa needs to think about oil or what Africa does with oil. Our reality is oil is what will give us the revenues that we need today to transit, and we cannot, there's just no way around that. We can talk about how we balance it, but we cannot talk about, we hear everyone say net zero in 2060, in 2040, but we first of all need to worry about today. And then we can think about tomorrow as we go along, but first we need to worry about today. In terms of gas resources, for example, Nigeria is probably rated 9th in the world. We've got maybe about 300 trillion feet in reserves. Have we tapped into that? No. Do we have the finances to tap into that? No. And I think one of the limiting factors for Nigeria and Africa as a whole is really financing. And I think it's really, really something that we should applaud the Afreximbank for, and the Apple for taking the initiative to start the Africa Energy Bank. Because we can sit in this room, we can talk about technology, we can talk about innovation, we can talk about oil and gas reserves, but it's all just a talk shop if we don't have the right people to finance us. Now, today, in terms of financing, we know that everyone's talking about ESG. If you go abroad or you find a foreign financier, the first thing they're going to ask you is how environmentally friendly is your project. So Africa needs to find finance for itself within Africa. Nobody's going to come and help us. And I think the sooner we realize that, the better for us. Again, I think there are a few things that have gone on in the industry recently that I think will determine the future of the oil and gas space in Nigeria. We have the Dangote refinery, which has just come up. We know how much we were spending in terms of importing fuel. Now, the thing that people don't see about fuel importation is that it's not just the price of the fuel. It's the foreign exchange that we spend in paying for vessels, so the freights. It's the foreign exchange that we spend in buying the product or the importation of the product, where, especially at the time when we had the different exchange rates, where government was the sole importer and would normally price. I think recently we saw in the NNPC accounts where they said they owed some money due to foreign exchange differentials. So we've got to be able to take all of those losses into consideration and then ask ourselves as a nation, where should we be? There's no nation that exports its natural resources rather than refine it, or send it out and then bring it back in. We pay a premium to bring it back in as finished goods, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's oil and gas. We have to start to think, how do we enhance the value chain within? How do we create an ecosystem that helps us capture every step within the value chain and make it one which is available, not just for governments, but even for individuals? And there's so many things that we can talk about. We're talking about renewable energy, we're talking about gas. Bear in mind that a lot of the gas that we have in Nigeria is associated gas. So you cannot even get that gas without talking about fossil fuels. So it becomes a case of which comes first. And we have to be able to resist those conversations where people say to us, it has to be like this. The truth is, we have to find our own solutions that work for us, make those solutions tailor-made, and then find financing within, and just hope that things get better for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. You made a statement that has resonated with me for a couple of years, especially when we started talking about energy transition. I think if we are to face our reality, especially for us coming home in Africa, in this part of the world, we need to first of all sort out energy poverty before we even start talking about transition. We have to recognize the fact that for us, fossil fuel isn't really going anywhere anytime soon, and we have to make that point across. And it's not a cookie cutter, it's not a one-size-fits-all to adopt every single policy. I mean, you talk about net zero emissions 2030, 2050. The reality is we're not quite there yet. So I'm happy that we're alive to our realities. So last but not the least, Osagie, please, your thoughts on this.
Excuse me, I think great points from Philip and Amina. I think where I will start from is that energy transition is real. We can't sidestep it, but it has to be situated, as has been discussed, within different climes on the basis of what works for them. Just take the example of when we started this debate over the past decade. It was a strong push to get to net zero. Most companies, most countries were going for 2050 for net zero. The big push was that you need to go much faster. For some companies like mine, NGOs were taking us to court to essentially push us to accelerate the energy transition. The Ukraine-Russian war happens, and everybody goes native. So suddenly, some of the biggest drivers of let's go faster they fall back, and a country like Germany begins to fall back on coal. So the essence of that is that it will be with us, whether we like it or not. It's a debate that must continue to happen, particularly in Europe. I think the US is another issue altogether, depending on which of the parties ends up in office. But the lesson for us, as both Philip and Amina have articulated, is that we must then look inwards, particularly for a resource-rich country like Nigeria, and say, how do we move fast such that when these debates that are beyond our own horizon are happening, that we actually optimize our resource base? For you to do that, 2 or 3 key factors are primary. One, you must have the resource base itself. And our resource base, at least in Africa, is second to none. Well over 200 TCF of discovered volumes of gas, undiscovered in excess of 600 TCF. For oil, 37.5 billion barrels of discovered volumes, according to the NUPRC. So we have the resource base. The one that is often underrated, understated, is talent. Nigeria has an unbelievable talent base across the value chain, whether in terms of the upstream, the midstream, the downstream, the service companies. We have the resource base. What was lacking for a long time was the right legal and regulatory framework. Then we got the PIA done. I was chairman of the industry forum at the time, so it was a big push to get the PIA done. Just let's get this thing done because it's been on the shelves for a decade. So we have it done now. We now have to get into a space where the regulatory space enables the laws. Because we wanted to write good laws. When we then go and write regulations that end up complicating the implementation of the laws, we have a problem. So that's the phase we are in right now. And that's a big push we have to just make sure what our regulatory agencies roll out are such that they effectively support the delivery. I'm quite an optimist in terms of where our industry is going. We have a collective initiative called the Decade of Gas Initiative. I give a lot of credit to LNG for being the initial brain behind that, at least in terms of financing it. If you see the kind of focus that effort brings to the table, you just realize how well we can do it. It brings all of us together, the major producers. The government is chaired by the honorable ministers for gas and petroleum, gas, and petroleum oil, essentially to pull all of us together. It's just one example of how far we can go. I can only conclude by essentially saying, just like Philip and Amina have said, that we have to look at our circumstances very, very closely in Nigeria. Our biggest problem, apart from the revenues that these commodities bring, is energy access. It's painful. Just see what has happened over the past few weeks over just access to petrol. When Shell was about to set up, our alternative energy company, Olon, we did quite a few surveys around the country. You'll be amazed as to the proportion of our people across the country who still rely on firewood and biomass, cow dung, for their fuel needs. So we have first an existential problem of making sure our people have the right access to energy. We've talked about gas as an accelerator fuel for our economy. So there's a lot we have to talk about in this country before we get to 100% into the world of energy transition. We need to have energy access and energy security in our country first. And I think all the efforts such as we're having today is geared towards making sure that we optimize what we have, attract the investment. I hear what Amina says. We need to try and finance with the likes of what the Apple and Co are doing. But the nature of our business is that there's no way we will not have to attract external finance. One of the big drivers that we used to push to get the attention of the lawmakers was around that time we were doing this bill, we were able to demonstrate that the financing resources that came into this continent, to this country, was 4%, 0.4% in Africa. We were only able to attract 4%. That was the time when we were all over the place, doing everything but getting it right. So I'm hopeful that with the changes that are now happening, we will get to a place where indeed we're beginning to get it right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those insights. So I'm going to actually start with you, Osagie, just on the back of what you've spoken about. You know, we're looking at market dynamics and future demand and how we adapt to market shifts. Now, when I bring it home specifically to your company, you know, you're basically, you know, integrated oil and gas and in fact an energy value chain company now. And if I were to ask you, you know, what the outlook is from a global perspective of oil and gas demand in the face of rising renewables, but then try and bring it for us more down to local expectations. You know, for example, what are SPDC plans for Nigeria long term? I mean, in terms of renewables, we hear a lot of talk about, I mean, like I keep saying, we're oil and gas, but even within that gas chain, I, for example, have been doing quite a lot of research in, you know, hydrogen, helium as replacement fuels. For you, bringing it locally, how has that impacted and how does that affect your outlook as a company?
Always an interesting question. Sometimes you ask me whether to answer it as Shell Nigeria or Shell International. Yeah.
Both.
So the
both. I can be Oliver Twist.
So at the global level, like I said, the transition is real. However, you've heard from multiple sources that well into the next few decades, fossil fuels will be part of the energy mix. You're not going to run away from it. It's sensible to work on the basis. You would have seen that not just for Shell, most of the big 5 international companies had started out essentially limiting their fossil fuel growth and then trying to pivot into other sources, electricity, power, and all of that. But you would notice in more recent times a bit of reality setting in, that you need to reset your base and ensure that you don't run out fossil fuels so that quickly. You should move in tandem with society. If society is not ready for you, you are running ahead of yourself. First and foremost, if you are not careful, you get into businesses that cannot fund themselves and all of that. So you need to balance it. However, hold to your fundamental target that by year 2050, for Nigeria is 2060, but for Shell is 2050, and for most international companies 2050, they get to a net zero. So we're pursuing that dual strategy to ensure that we maintain in our portfolio oil and majorly gas. Because we all consider gas to be the transition fuel. keep it in the portfolio, but play actively in other areas like hydrogen that you've mentioned and all, but to do it in tandem with the market. I said, should I talk as international or as Nigeria? Because when we come back to when we're down to Nigeria, it's nuanced. My priority in Nigeria today is to make sure I attract the right level of funding to develop what is a huge resource base.
Yes.
So in Nigeria, you would have heard essentially our strategy is to pivot more to deep water.
Yes.
Because that's where we have the technological advantage, that's where we have the financing advantage and all. And then increasingly, and that's not just for Shell now, it's for most of the internationals, increasingly allow the well-developed local players to play onshore. We have, in the country, also recognized our responsibility as leaders in the transition story. So that's why I mentioned Olon recently, which is an alternative energy company, focused primarily on the Delta, but also across the country. I always say to them, they are punching above their weights. Today, I think we have something like 49,000 connections, solar. We have also recently acquired another company called Daystar. Daystar is focused on alternative cleaner energy sources, primarily solar, but for the industrial concerns.
Yes.
And they are very active across the country, trying to help companies convert their power sources from diesel and all of that more into cleaner energy sources. So we will play in that space, we would expand, but the kind of resources we need to play in our traditional fossil fuel, I would say energy, is significant. We are talking just one project, say, in deep water for the easily $5 billion in the horizon. That's significant. So we are going to have to balance that. So if I suddenly say to you as Shell Nigerian, oh, we're going to leave all this resource in the ground and start chasing the transition, then that's not the right strategy. So it's a balancing strategy we are following. So we will play, we will lead, actually, in pivoting and essentially proving several of these alternative energy sources by investing in them, but also we'll continue to develop the resource base that this country direly needs. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, that was really to allay our fears that Shell is not, running out on us.
Not going anywhere.
Yeah, not going anywhere.
Yeah, stuck with me for a long time.
Good, and we're hopeful that, we, like you rightfully said, we have a lot of untapped reserves that what we in the industry consider as ultra deep water, which is very resource and financial intensive. So we're looking towards the likes of the Shells to develop that for us. So I'm going to move to Philip. Philip, in terms of investment and financing and attracting the right investment, in a transitioning market, when we look at Nigeria LNG, you've sort of staked, to a very large extent, your future on gas. You're currently running 6 trains. There's a construction for the 7th train ongoing. Congratulations on that. But there's so much more potential to add an 8th train, possibly even a 9th one. But even, I can't remember, I think I recall at FID, we're closing on about 6 or something billion for, and you can enlighten us further. If you now look further down the line, what are your plans towards attracting the right investments and the challenges I think you will have in reality in attracting investments because of just the global dynamics and shifts in just the general investment space? Amina made a point when she was talking about the fact that accessing quite a few of these gas resources, mainly NAG. So you're going to have an investment that attracts both the oil and the gas. So what is your strategy? What is NLNG's strategy in terms of forward financing, big investments that is required to do for the trains for LNG?
Thank you. I think the starting point is where you began your question, which is we are fundamentally a natural gas company. In essence, we don't deal with oil. Yeah. We do handle some condensate that comes with the gas, and that's one of the products that we sell. And of course, we also produce cooking gas, LPG, butane, propane, which we supply into the domestic market, to also help with the energy transition in the domestic market. Some of the fuels that Osagie described most Nigerians use, whether it's cow dung, biomass, and so on and so forth. Our hope is that the LPG displaces that over time and helps to move people to cleaner fuels, not only for the climate, but also for health reasons. But our main product is LNG, which is exported. Brings in revenue, significant amounts of revenue for the country, obviously. To date, NLNG has never had a problem with financing. And I say to date. And I say that because over the past 1 week, and yes, there have been some shutdowns happening both in the upstream and with one of our trains as well, but our capacity utilization was in the 40s. Year to date, it has hovered around 62%, which means that roughly about 40% of our capacity, that's of the 6 trains, has been empty. And this is the result of a number of different things, right? One of them is actually investment has slowed over the past decade within the upstream oil and gas sector, which has then resulted in less, both everything from exploration to developing the known resources that we have, but also down to things like even maintenance. Coming out of COVID, I don't think the industry ever recovered. But coupled on top of the declining investment, there's also then been the security issue in the environment. That is actually part of the cause for the lack of investment. And that's, they may not admit it, but a lot of those who are divesting from the upstream, right? It's not unrelated to the security challenges. There may be other factors. Now, why am I describing that environment? It is that if you are an international investor and you're looking at investing in Nigeria oil and gas, probably one of the first people that you'd like to talk to is Osagie. What's the lay of the land? How is it going? Yeah. And so when you begin to hear some of these things, they are the things that discourage investors. So earlier I talked about some of the hurdles or the challenges, that actually impede investment. These are the things that are largely, to a huge extent, within our control as a country. If you take the natural gas sector, within oil and gas generally, you find that deep water, until last month, we never had defined fiscal terms for investing in deep water gas. In other words, even if you wanted to, you could not invest in deep water gas because the terms were uncertain. And somebody could wake up someday and then define them, and it would be something that's unacceptable, and just kills your investment dead in the water. Last month, this industry has been in place for 60, going to 70 years. So kudos to the government. We are making progress, in the area. But I'm saying that these are the sort of own goals that we have been scoring ourselves. And so if I'm to look at some of the things that need to be done to actually attract investment, I would say the regulatory is key. The fiscals, absolutely key. We have made progress. But we're not there yet, and we need to move faster. And Sage talked about the PIA, absolutely key. Brought together about 16 different laws, made sense of them in the light of today, vis-a-vis when some of them were written in the 50s and so on. And that was a big step forward. It didn't solve all the problems, but it helped. Second, specifically for gas, is the decade of gas that he mentioned. This is an approach that actually looked at all of the things we have attempted in the past. Gas master plan, this and that, all sorts of things, and decided to pull them all together under one umbrella and say, how do we actually enable gas to open up opportunities for our economy as a country going forward? And it's looked at everything, even onto power. And it's taken those issues and come out with specific practical things that we can do to address them. And this is something NLNG has supported very strongly. And now the entire industry has put its shoulders behind it. And the government is there at the table. The third that I want to highlight, again, more specific to gas, is around the recent presidential orders. A few months ago, the president issued some orders that had to do with unlocking dry gas, non-associated gas. These were things that, again, for years and years, nobody wanted to touch, even though the resources were there, because you just didn't know on what condition you were making that investment. And then just recently, just within the last couple of weeks, terms for deep water have also now been defined. So we are clearly making progress. These are things that within the industry we've talked about for over 20, 30 years and just weren't making headway. So progress is being made. What I would say is that there are a couple of others that we have to tackle. Infrastructure is another one. So again, you go into an industry that developed, and even though NNPC has 60% or 55 across all the JVs, every JV was building its own pipeline, sometimes in the same corridor. And so lots of investment that went in, but was not optimized from a national perspective. But also we need more infrastructure. It took us a long time just to connect the East and the West gas systems in Nigeria. We're still trying to complete it and get it to work. Getting gas to the North, right? Again, it's underway. It took us a long time. There's so much infrastructure that is required for us to be able to unlock the potential in our economy, and it also needs investment. My view is that government has a role to play to create that enabling environment, sometimes put in seed funding, but actually it's a private sector thing. It has to be driven by the private sector. One of the things that we have not addressed, and I say this boldly, we have not addressed, is security in the Niger Delta. There have been efforts, there have been activities, but I have told anybody that's willing to listen, if you want to know whether it is successful or not, ask Osage how much oil he's getting in Bonny Terminal. Come and ask me how much gas I'm getting in Bonny NLNG. We will give you the scorecard for whatever effort is being made. Anything else you need on the pages, read on the pages of newspapers and so on, stories. It has to be tackled. We can't hide from it. If we don't deal with that, why would anybody want to bring their money, their investment into this kind of an environment? Even as a Nigerian, would I take my hard-earned money and want to put it into that environment? However, we are optimistic, and we have seen some very brave and optimistic Nigerians who are acquiring some of these assets from the IOCs. And I commend them. But look, we can't give up on our own country. No. And so it is really commendable, and we are supporting them in whatever the way that we can to ensure that we turn around those operations. The good thing is that for these people, Many of them are not dealing with a global portfolio across 80 countries, 100 countries, 60 countries. This is it. This is all they have. They have to make it work. And they will be able to also apply various approaches to making it work, which some of the globals may not. And so we have to unlock the potential in the industry using local capacity, local approaches, local money where possible. It's not going to be enough, to be very clear. The oil and gas industry is probably one of the most capital intensive in the country. Hugely capital intensive. We don't have the depth in the capital market in Nigeria to support it alone, but we do have enough to trigger some of these things. And so creating that environment, removing some of these obstacles, and there are so many others that I could list, is absolutely key to facilitating that investment to happen.
Thank you. And you've sort of articulated a lot of the imperatives that we need to harp on to ensure that we attract what I call sustainable financing. Because yes, you can get financing, but not long-term sustainable financing. We have to ensure that it's the right mix. So coming to Amina, and it's really leading on from a lot of what Philip just said now. You represent for us here what I call the private sector perspective. It's often said that we rely a lot on the private sector to grow and to move the economy. But in your particular case, in terms of looking, future outlook, a lot of it, I dare say, would border on what I call strategic partnerships and collaborations, the power of partnership, because you cannot build this on your own. And so in light of that, what we would like to hear from you is, your perspective in terms of how collaboration works for you between your company, traditional energy companies, IOCs, and then, looking further up front, renewables, just to foster that growth from a private sector perspective, because hitherto, as you know, and we all know, the industry has sort of been defined and grown really from a government IOC-led perspective. So it'll be interesting to see how, in this era of transition, private companies and what you're doing to help to accelerate that growth.
Okay, I think Osagie touched on that a bit, where he said they are sort of diversifying in some areas, and I think we all know what's going on in the upstream space today, where we have most of the IOCs leaving and private companies coming in. For any of those private sector companies or those private companies to thrive, they will have to collaborate with the IOCs. The reason the IOCs are leaving, as we've just heard from Philip, is mainly security, right? And we can't kid ourselves about the issues that exist. Some things the IOCs may not be able to do, the private companies are able to, and you just heard him say that, where we can work with the local content, NCDMB, to go and find what I would call grassroots solutions. In some cases, the IOCs are not able to do that, for whatever reasons. They have their risk matrix, they have their governance processes that limits them. But as private sector, the first thing that we think is, we are Nigerians, right? And no one's going to come in and solve our problem for us. So if we don't find the solutions, we will just end up sitting on the sideline and complaining like everybody else. We also are mindful of the fact that we need an enabling environment. We don't have the resources that the IOCs have. We don't have the financing that they have. We don't have the technology that they have. But we're able to collaborate with them. And even in terms of funding, there are all kinds of alternative funding that the IOCs render, whether it's on the basis of a supply contract, forward sale. There's so many different options to finance. So while they may not be on ground to take the risk because of all those issues that exist, they're there to say, well, we can help you with the solution, with the technology that you need. We can help you with the financing in terms of the offtake. So we have all kinds of off-taker agreements with the IOCs, with other multinationals. But I think most importantly for private sector is also the regulator. And I think sometimes we downplay the role of the regulator in the industry. If we don't have regulators who are aligned, or regulators who have a good understanding of what needs to be done, we will continue to get bogged down with bureaucracies. We see that a lot, I dare say, with a lot of the regulators. We will continue to have duplications. One of the issues we deal with as private sector is duplication of functions. You have the Ministry of Environment, you have the NMDPRA, you have the NUPRC, then at state level, you have all kinds of regulators or commissions at state level. And until we're able to have an honest conversation where we bring everybody together and say, listen, we are basically scratching the surface, right? And we need to understand that multiple taxation in whatever form, whether you want to call it levies or you want to call it taxes, doesn't help. It discourages private sector from participating actively. Because at some point you ask yourself, is it really worth it? And those are some of the things that we consider. But then again, we say to ourselves, well, we can't give up. We will continue to have these conversations. We will continue to dialogue with government, with multinationals, with financiers. Because if we give up, then what is the hope? I mean, what happens? The IOCs are leaving. If we then throw in the towel, then what happens? Also, you have to remember that this is a sector that employs a lot of people. And I tell people that people don't realize the amount of households that are employed through this industry, whether it's downstream, whether it's midstream, whether it's upstream. If you take downstream, for example, just look at how many depot owners you have, how many people work in those depots, how many retail stations you have, how many people work in those retail stations. Even in transportation, for every truck that you find moving on the road, the truck driver has an assistant, But these are like low-level employments that people don't see. They're not formal. They're informal employments, but they add up to, the economy, to the society, to just keeping our social welfare going. It may not be organized, because you don't have them in companies and all of that, but for every one person that you see, there are probably 4 or 5 people benefiting from the work that they do. Even for the communities, what you have now with private sector, you're engaging communities to say, okay, at community level, can we get security men? Can we get artisans? Can we, just get everyone involved? And I think that's one of the major differences between private sector and government or the multinationals, where we can go in and say, okay, in this community, I want X number of people. The IOCs may be limited by their governance structure, by their risk matrix. We're flexible on that, and it makes a huge difference, but we cannot do it alone. And I don't think that even within private sector, you can do it as an individual. And we're seeing that. We're seeing companies come together to form consortiums because nobody can do it alone. But we still need government to encourage what private sector is doing. We need a lot of, I don't want to say conferences, but I think, because we'll just be talking, but I think we need to be able to sit in a room with regulators, with government, with multinationals, and call ourselves out. And not just talk and just another talk shop. We need to be able to ask NNPC, you are a national oil company. Today you're a limited liability company. Are you acting like one? What are you doing? What is your future plan? Because the company belongs to all of us, right? And every day we hear the GMD making a lot of statements about how, they're transitioning to a full limited liability company. But we want them to be able to do that in a way where they collaborate with private sector, where they're no longer just having all the 60%, maybe they're divesting, just different things. But whether we like it or not today, there's a conversation that must take place with NNPC and private sector. There's a conversation that must take place with the regulators and private sector. And we all need to be able to sit together and then come out with a clear roadmap, which we will then show to Nigerians. Because another issue we have in the industry is lack of trust.
And transparency.
Whenever you talk about oil industry, people are like, oh, they're thieves. That's the truth. Because there's a lack of trust, but we must be able to change the narrative, and we must be able to do that transparently. We must be able to come out and say, this is really the cost of doing business in the industry. Yes. It's very opaque at the moment. Nobody can tell you this is what it is. One day you hear this is the cost of production. The next day you hear this is the cost of security. The day after you hear this is the cost of pipelines, But we have to be able to have those conversations. We have to be able to invest in infrastructure. We have to be able to invest in technology. We have to be able to innovate, because we can't take something that is out there and just say we're just going to copy and paste. There's a peculiarity in Nigeria that ensures that we must find our own local solutions for our local problems. We can take what is out there, but then we must tweak it to reflect our own peculiar situation. And I think once we're able to do that, we'll be able to see the difference. But private sector is all about collaboration, is all about, conversations, dialogues, to move this industry forward, to see the growth that we want to see. We need to have some very hard, honest, open conversations.
Thank you so much for that. It's very thought-provoking, because part of what we had wanted to talk about with our other speaker who couldn't make it was really on the regulatory and policy landscape. We've done a lot of work, with the PIA. It's not perfect, but we have an act. There's still a lot that we need to eradicate. There's a lot of duplication, and you've pointed out some even now. And I think, there are honest conversations, as you said, maybe not in a workshop, but we really need to roll up our sleeves, get into a room and have those discussions. So two things. I'm going to give the audience an opportunity if anyone has questions. Remember I said at the beginning that you don't get to have this extremely high-level panel, so please take advantage of that. And then secondly, because it's a very interactive and forward-looking discussions we're having, there's a QR code that is going to be shared. It should be pasted above, but they will share the QR code. Please scan it. There's some questions that the NESG would like you to answer that is going to form part of the policy documents that will come out as a result of this workshop and this particular panel. So please take your time later on to scan that code and answer. It's just 4 questions, but would really like to have your feedback. Any questions from the audience? I hope we have a spare microphone that we can take around. So just introduce yourself and let us know where the question and to whom it's directed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Patrick Odiegu. I serve as Secretary General, Association of Miners and Processors of Barite. I want to direct my question to Madam on the private sector. Since 2010, Local Content Act was passed that clearly stipulated that 60% of barite should be sourced from Nigeria. Till today, barite has continued to be imported into this country. Meanwhile, our members, including myself that has a barite mine, produces barite that can guarantee 4.2, which is above American Petroleum Institute standard. Every single year, this country spends over $300 million in importation of barite. So we can't be talking about building capacity in Nigeria while we are basically throwing away our money. So how do we address this issue comprehensively from this meeting to make sure that Nigerian barite are used in oil and gas? Thank you.
I think Amina is the wrong person to direct that question to you.
The right person will answer your question.
The right, it's for those who are not very aware, it's a major product we use in drilling operations. So that's really more of an upstream thing. Yeah, it's always very dangerous to zero into one specific area. So I would rather take that question more from the broad perspective of our local content law and what it has achieved. Outside this, when we have the specific data, we can catch up and discuss barite specifically. My experience with the local content board, starting from when my ex-colleague, Engineer Simbi Wabote, was the executive secretary, is that it's been one of the most effective government intervention regulatory agencies. I think they have asserted themselves, not just asserted themselves in terms of what the law says, but asserted themselves in terms of understanding the needs of the industry and channeling their processes. And we have practical Nigerian content sessions every year where they come and provide their scorecard. If they were here in the room, I would have probably asked one of them to just give a specific response with respect to varieties. But I'm very happy to connect you to them. Very happy to connect you to them because it's not an agency that shies away from challenge. I have to deal with them every time to execute projects. Philip and LNG had to deal with them in executing a multi-billion-dollar Train 7 project, and they were inside it. Before you get a waiver out of NCDMB, you will have to go to great lengths to show there is not local capacity available to do it. So I speak from a long history of association with them to say they have actually done a great job in just ensuring that you balance. I should add very quickly, because we're all Nigerians mainly in the room, I can say it. One of the focus areas of the recent presidential directives, some actually call it executive orders that came out in the last year or so that Philip referred to, was local content. And it was local content to the context, in the context that it would be local content that is real local content, not middleman local content, where you stay in the middle because you are in Nigeria, you go and import exactly the same thing and add a significant margin. When I was in Asia, that used to be called the Alibaba syndrome. That was a specific area of target in the presidential directive to say you must demonstrate that you're actually adding value. That's why I liked the way you started out by using the example of yourself to say we are producing it. I have recently in Shell had a big discussion and issue with pipeline coating to make sure that before we go out to go and import pipelines and coat them outside, to make sure that we didn't have coating capacity. And by the time we're done with that process, we have something like 2 or 3 pipeline coating plants in this country today that can actually run and coat pipelines. So it's a success story. We are not there like everything you do, but I think our Local Content Act and the execution by the NCDMB has been one of our success stories in the industry. So I mean, I hope I saved you from that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Eniola Kinkwotu. I work with the Africa Report. I'm a journalist with the Africa Report. My question is to Shell. You're selling off some of your onshore assets to Renaissance. Want to know how far that deal has gone, and also what is happening to Shell's liabilities, regarding the environment and all that. Who is going to pick up the bill? I just want to understand, because a lot of environmentalists have been asking, that is Shell just running away and leaving, the mess behind? Thank you.
On the first question, my answer was going to be no comment. I know that would not be acceptable. I'm half joking. We have made, as many Nigerians will know, we have decided to do a share sale, which is essentially seek to sell our onshore business to a Nigerian consortium that came through a very rigorous process of selection. Once you have done that, your next step is to apply to the state, to the regulator and the minister for consent. That is where we are. We have applied for that consent, and a consent process means a lot of dialogue and engagement, clarifications, and all of that. So that's essentially where we are. When I hear environmental legacies and all of that, it's part of the conversation. The one assurance I can give is that we take this extremely seriously. We make the right level of provisions. It's one of the areas that the regulator essentially zeroes in on as an assessment criteria before consent can be granted. We have properly dimensioned it, but I'm always very quick to add that when you talk about environment, the larger percentage of your environmental problems is just barefaced criminality that's happening in the Delta. That's the problem we have. As I always say, I'm paid to produce oil and keep it in the pipeline, not to spill it in the environment. But when people start putting holes in trying to steal, then you pollute the environment, it becomes much more of a problem. But it's something we take very seriously. Like I said at the beginning, Shell is in this country for the long term. So we're not going away. What we're just doing, we are rebalancing our portfolio away from the onshore environment to whom we believe have a very competent consortium of 4 companies to run that business going forward, whilst we focus our efforts and invest, frankly, much more in our deep water operations. So that's where we are with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, our time is fast spent. We would...
I already have the mic.
Okay, we'll allow that last question.
My name is Cynthia Obiora, and it's quite interesting. I haven't seen this caliber of personalities brought together for this type of talk. But it's interesting. It's not kind of complete if we do not have the regulators, because what Madam Amina said is quite true. Sometimes I wonder if the regulators are business enablers or business. They are set up to crumble the business. And it's disheartening. We're not just talking about international businesses. We're talking about local businesses, in the oil and gas space. So it would be, I would like to beg, they have the organizers of this, this is my first time here, and it's quite enriching. I will have to beg them to please put in their possible best to get the regulators on the seat. It's good enough we're having some very good, deep talk here, but if the regulators are not here to feel our pains, it's not kind of complete to me. Because we need them. We're talking about looking for finances, but we have international faces here as well. And if there's no enabling environment for even the local content, how will there be enabling environment for the international? So we need to have the regulators, and please, if I know the news people are here, please take our voices to them as well. The business needs to survive. Nigeria needs to grow. We need to cut off the chains.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you. That is well taken on board. Unfortunately, we had one person who would have fit that bill, but had to pull out unexpectedly yesterday. So the panel was we were actually 5. But it's very well noted, and we'll make sure that we have that full representation again. Thank you. So we have an online question. Okay, so we have a virtual question, which Wasu, do you want to read that out? And I hope it's something we can answer very fast.
Okay. Today we have queues at various petrol stations, open in Lagos, and guess same is the situation in Abuja. We were under the impression that Dangote Refinery things will get better. Where are we with NNPCL, DAPMAN, MOMAN, and other operators in the industry as regards PMS supply and distribution?
So I think Amina actually is best placed to answer that question, as she's heavily vested in that particular area.
Okay, I think I can answer the question because coincidentally I'm the vice chairman of DAPMAN, and I also have a position in Mayman. So the Dangote refinery is up and running. As you know, when the refinery started, there was a lot of conversations with regards to the sale of petrol to every company. Initially, it was going to be NNPC as the sole off-taker. But as we heard, I believe it was last week, the committee that was set up by Mr. President, headed by the Minister of Finance, where they said everyone can now buy directly from the refinery. But I think there's still some modalities that they need to complete for that to happen. In any case, as we know, and this is typically why in downstream we try to avoid queues at all. Because when it starts, it becomes a lot difficult to clear the queues. You have issues of panic buying, you have issues of shortages. But I think over the next few days, those queues will disappear because I'm aware that there's a lot more product that has come into the system. Dangote Refinery has started selling the PMS, not to individual companies that, I can't comment on that, I can't speak for them, but I'm aware that there's product going out of the refinery already. I'm aware that there's a vessel currently loading. So by the end of this week, you should have the Dangote Refinery petrol in the market from various depots. Coincidentally, ours is one. So that's why I can answer. But even from the refinery, a lot of trucking has been going out from last week. So I'm sure that at the end of this week, you will see that all the queues will disappear, but there is sufficient product. And I think it's really more of panic buying at this point. Because NNPC have been saying that they have sufficient fuel. It is true. They do have sufficient fuel now that the refinery is up and running. So I hope that assuages the fears that people have. But the product is in, the refinery is up, is working, and it would continue to get better because as we go along, they're going to continue to ramp up the production. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's really interesting. We could go on and on and on, but our time is fast spent, and I stand between you and lunch, I believe. We're just going to have, I'm going to indulge or crave the indulgence of my panelists to just round up with just a minute closing remarks. I'll start with Philip. And Philip, I'm actually a bit more specific for you. I'd like you to just touch on something that is maybe close to my own heart in terms of just your perspective and how we integrate technology. We're talking AI, data analytics, just happen that. I think for Sage, in your closing remarks, I'd like you to hop on, the evolution of the workforce. And again, it's something I remember in my young days on the field. A few years ago, I won't comment on that, but even at that point in time, I was already hearing things like crew change. I mean, we've changed the acronyms, but I'd like you to comment on that. And for Aisha, Amina, I'm so sorry. No, that's her sister. That's her sister. Yes. For Amina, I think it's really on the passion of the youth in terms of just forward thinking and how they can help shape this. So we'll start with Philip, and then Amina, and then Osage. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Before I get into that point, I did want to highlight one thing, which I think is absolutely key, and we didn't have time to touch on it, without which we cannot unlock Nigeria's economy. And for me, that is power. If we do not solve the issues along the gas to power value chain, support the scaling up of distributed generation, ensure that revenues can flow from the power end user all the way back to whatever the fuel source is, we will never be able to unlock the potential of the Nigerian economy, because power is what enables small, medium-scale enterprises to thrive. Power is what enables manufacturing to thrive. Power is what enables everything else, to work. And I just wanted to highlight that. But let me get to, technology. This is something that is also, like you, very dear to my heart. And for us as a company, is something that we have really imbibed. We have actually taken a step back to say, we've done well as a company for over 25 years of operation. But what does the future hold? And are we ready for the future? The pace at which things are changing around us, and particularly technology, is so fast that what got us here is not going to get us into the future. And so we put in place a transformation program that encapsulates a number of things. First is our existing business. How can we make it more efficient, more effective, and how do we embed operational excellence in our existing business? The second is around processes and technology. How do we ensure that that is not only fit for today, but we're actually set up for tomorrow? And I'll come back to this, right? We also then looked at future opportunities. What does the world hold for us going forward into tomorrow? Because tomorrow's world, energy-wise, is not going to be the same as today. We talked about energy transition and all of those kind of things. Then we have a specific part of the program that's focused on energy transition and all that we need to do within that space. And then people. And I won't dive into that, but we realize how critical that is. There is a massive loss of critical talent. I don't bother about the numbers, right? We have over 200 million people. I can always replace the numbers. It's the quality of what we're losing. And we're losing these to Canada, to Europe, and various places. And it's really about how do we retain, but how do we continue to develop and replace also the critical talent, right? And, finally, we felt that doing all of this, we also needed to rebrand. And so you'll find that last Friday, Nigeria LNG actually rebranded, itself. And one of the most noticeable things in the rebranding is because of where we're going in the future, we cannot continue to carry a flame at the center of our logo, right? And there's so many other reasons. When you look at our logo, it was relevant when we were set up. It's no longer relevant today. And so NLNG has indeed rebranded. Come back to technology. Our plant today, the entire plant, the 6 trains, we have now got a digital twin of the train. Down to the last bolt and nut, it's on a digital twin, meaning on an iPad, you can actually locate every single equipment. You can actually see how things are functioning. You can go and work on, So we've done that. But this is old technology. And so things like predictive maintenance, we are already applying. whereby technology is able to tell you what's going to go wrong, what needs to be replaced even before it has failed. That we're already applying. Now we need to scale it up, we need to apply it in different parts of our system and process. But AI is going to be the single most transformational technology that this world has seen, ever. It's going to impact not just manpower, it's going to impact how we do things, what we even do fundamentally. And so that is an area that's quite new. That's an area that I think Nigeria really has to prepare for and embark upon. And so what I'll leave you with is, I think the industry has to set itself up to really grasp what AI is bringing to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you. Amina, very quickly, he tapped on Japa syndrome, which is what we call it here, but just your thoughts on how we can retain talent, with their passion still intact.
Okay. I'm going to be very brief because I think we're out of time. And probably another set should be in the room now. I think that we cannot think about the growth of the sector without being intentional about the youth. As a nation, there's 70% of our population, right? So we will have to make the investments to train them, to encourage them, to employ them. For us as an organization, for example, when we do interviews, we don't particularly look out for your certificate on paper, because as long as you've got the zeal, and you're willing to put in the time, we're happy to train you. We have also started this graduate trainee program that we do, where we take people fresh off universities and we do interviews, we train them, we employ them. But one of the reasons we're doing that is because we also recognize that the future is technology, and the rate at which the young people use technology, none of us sitting here use technology that way. So it's something that we're encouraging. It's a way by which we're bringing them on board, where you can work from your home, do what you need to do, but just work remotely. And we will continue to do that and encourage them so that we keep talents at home. But I think generally everybody has to make the investment to train them and not just think, oh, well, we don't have the skills. We have to create the skills that we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Osage, 30 seconds.
My own timeline is going down, yeah. Seriously, very, very quickly before we leave, the last of the conferences I was in like this, I made the point. Let's not go away from here with the thought that our industry is in decline. It is not. I make bold to say that since the enactment of the PIA and some of the supporting things we have talked about earlier, we're actually in a much better place. Still some discussions to be had about our relationships with regulators and all of that. However, the building blocks are there. The presidential directives that have come out are providing a degree of coherence that we hadn't seen in a long time in the industry. So I just wanted us to at least live with that perspective. I think everything that needs to be said about talent has been said. The one thing I will add is that certainly for me and for us in Shell, it's not just the talent and the crew change, it's also, frankly, the diversity of that talent. To have a lot more females in the talent pool is a particular issue for us. I gave an example when I spoke to women in Shell last week, that in the days when I was vice president for HR, I had one woman in my well engineering department. Today it's almost 30% of that population. So we also have to think of the diversity of that talent. But I think it's all well and good. We are headed in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Philip, Amina, and Osage. This has really been a very interesting and engaging session. The conversations don't stop here. It's really for us to take it back, think on it. Reports and actionable items would come out of this. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So we'll just take a quick break.
Thank you.